everyone. So on our project that we've been working on with the machine applique, we're getting ready to put the whole thing together, and we're going to do this one without using binding, because I know for some people, especially beginners, putting binding around is scary. So the couple things we need a backing fabric that's about 2 inches shorter than whatever your length is. And you're going to go by what your length is. It doesn't matter what the pattern said the length was. Your length is whatever you end up with. So you're going to measure one end to the other and cut this piece about 2 inches shorter. Then we want a second piece for the back, because it's going to go over this edge. And that's so that we can turn it right side out. And you'll see what I mean when we get it done. And I fold this one in half. So this one will be, oh, and I'm sorry, your width is the same width as your pattern. So this folded over one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5 wide, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6.5 by 6. The 6.5 I got is my width here, okay? And then we're just going to fold that in half and press it and set those aside for the moment. The next thing we need to have is where you're going to put your hanger through, the metal hanger. Now if you decide you want to put loops or no hanger, that's up to you, but I want to make a little, what we call a little sleeve. And I don't want the sleeve as long as the project, because I don't want this sewn in to the seams. This needs to be open on each end, because what's going to happen is it's going to fold over. It's going to be at the top on the back, and you got to have room on each side to put the metal part of the hanger through. So this piece is 2 inches, oh, let me do it on this side, sorry. This piece is 2 inches wide, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches long, and then I'm going to fold in about a 1/2 inch on each side, and I'm going to stitch along each edge. But we'll get to that stitching part in a little bit. Okay? So now that we have all our pieces, the next thing we need to do is square this up. And what that means is we want to make this even all the way around. So when you square something up, whether it's a small project like this or a bigger quilt or a giant quilt, it all works the same. Generally, you're going to use a square ruler, and that goes to the corner, because we need to square up. We need to square up along this edge and this top at the same time. That's what squaring up means. Because if I just run a ruler, let me get my little ruler. If I just run a ruler along here and just cut off the batting and stuff, I don't know if it's squared up or not. I just know this line is straight. But is it straight to what? I don't know. So we always want to grab a corner. And again, same thing on a great big quilt. And we want to line it up so that we're at the edge. Let me turn it this way. So we're at the edge of where the fabric is and at the edge of where the fabric is. Now, in order to know if that's really straight, I need to pick a couple of spots. And let me see if I can come in a little bit so you can see. So I'm looking at where this border on each side and on the top is. And I want to run my ruler so that it's straight along there. Am I going to have a line right on the border? No, very unlikely. But I can pick a line and say that it's a 1/8 of an inch away. I can pick it and see that it's the same distance away on each side. And I also want to pick a line going across this way to make sure that this is all square. And then I'm just going to go ahead for now, and I'm just going to take care of that top. Okay? Now I want to turn it, and the next thing I have to pay attention to is coming down along here. I can look at my, let me back this up. I can look here and I can see at the bottom I'm kind of curving. So I want to make sure that I've ironed this well, okay? And sometimes just when we lay it down, can you see how it's curved in? Well, that was just how I was laying it. So now it's much straighter. I need a second ruler, and I'm going to butt it up against the first ruler because I want to make sure that this edge is also squared up to here. And I'm only going to go part way. I'm not going to go down to the bottom yet because I want to take this squared ruler and put it down here to make sure this end is squared up. So I'm going to look along here, and again, I'm running my ruler so I can see one of my lines, and I'm not sure, let me see if I can, I'm running one of my lines along my border fabric. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep my hand right here, and I'm just going to come down about halfway. Let me back up again. Whoops, sorry. So see, I'm only about halfway. Then I'm going to take my square ruler and I'm going to put it at the bottom and make sure that it's squared up along my bottom edge. So my bottom edge, see if you can see here. My bottom edge, I have a little bit of fabric showing here and not here. So I have to put my ruler where the edge of that fabric is. And it's maybe, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch difference, but it still is a difference. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is squared up. I'm going to put this ruler back on and line it up. And again, I'm going to check to make sure that one of the lines on my ruler is going down along my border and it's following all the way down. Okay, I'm going to put my hand down. I know it's kind of in your way. Okay, you notice I don't take my hand off the ruler until I know this is cut. All right, so let me back, oops, sorry, keep going the wrong way. Let me back this up. And now we can see, oh, and I should have done that bottom, but I'll do that in a minute. But we can see how nice and straight this is. So I can turn this around, so I'm upside down, but I'm going to put my ruler back on, my square ruler. I already know that it's right on this side. I need to make sure that I have fabric under the whole way here. Okay, and I'm not going to trim this until I add some of this, until I add my second ruler on. Now, I've got to come over a little ways because I'm not quite 6 there. So I'm not running this edge to the edge of the fabric. I'm running the right hand edge to the edge of the fabric. Because if I had a big quilt, my ruler, I'd be using a bigger ruler, but I still wouldn't get to the other end. So try to ignore trying to match up this end with your ruler because your ruler might not be the right distance. And again, I'm going to look and make sure I have a line that's straight. And I want to look across here, a line that's straight, and I'm looking here and a line that's straight. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and cut this top. And you're going to stand properly. I'm kind of trying to stand so you can see. And then again, I'm going to cut halfway down because I need to make sure that the long ruler is squared up to this bottom. So I'm only going to cut about halfway. And you notice again, I'm pulling that away before I take my fingers off the ruler. The other thing I want to make mention of, let me get this ruler on, make sure it's straight across, straight here. You always want to make sure that you have at least 4 inches, if you're using a bigger ruler, bigger quilt more, of the straight edge. You don't want to be way down here because you want to make sure that this ruler stays true to this edge. And my rulers match up here. My lines of my ruler are matching up. And then I'm just going to look and make sure, yep, I'm good, I'm good. Coming across here, it's nice and straight. So now I can go ahead and finish this. And everything is nice and straight. Okay? Now I'll measure across here to make sure I have the right amount for my backing. So I'm going to have to trim it a little, and that's fine. I want my backing and this piece to match, and I want to make sure my little sleeve hanger is about, I'd say 3/4, oh look, you can't see that, can you? I would say about 3/4 of an inch on each side shorter than what you have for that distance. So go ahead and get yourself squared up, cut your pieces, and we'll come back and start our sewing. Okay, so we're all squared up. My piece measured 6 inches across, so I've gone 6 inches across with my long piece, and remember, we want it to be shorter. Let me move some of this back. We want it to be a couple inches shorter here, and I'll show you how you know how much shorter to make it. We have our other flap, and that one was, in this case, it's 6 inches by 6 inches, because mine is 6 inches across, so I need to trim mine a little bit, because I had done 6.5. And how this is going to work, and we're just going to set this aside for 1 second. So how this is going to work is we're going to lay this right sides together. So right sides together all the way up to the top, and let me just push it up a little ways extra. And see how we want to have this little opening. So that's about 2 inches. It could be 1.5 inches or so. But what the point of the second piece is, you want it to overlap by a good inch. So that's how you have to get your measurements. So no matter how long you are, you want to be, I'd say, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, but you want to have 1 inch of overlap between this one and this one here. Okay? Also, don't forget that whichever piece you lay down first, which we're going to lay down the little one, the folded one first with the fold facing in and the edges, raw edges lining up. And then this will come on top, and see how they overlap. Okay, so that when we turn this right side out, this piece will be on the outside, the folded piece will be on the outside. So that's how we'll cover, excuse me, that's how we'll cover this raw edge here. If this raw edge bothers you, cut it longer, fold it up, because you really don't want to have too many layers on top of one another. So you could just bring it down maybe 1/2 inch, fold it up once, and stitch across if you want to, but it's not necessary. Or you could serge across, but it's really not necessary because there's not going to be any wear and tear to it. Okay? So the first thing we have to address is our small piece. That's our little sleeve. So I'm 6 inches across here. I cut this 5.5, and then I turned it under 1/2 inch on each side, and now I'm going to go sew it. So let's get it sewn. And we're just doing a regular straight stitch. And we don't have to worry about locking each end. You can if you want to, but it's going to be in the seam. so it's going to be fine. And I'm just trying to keep my hands out of the way of the camera. So normally this is how I would have my hand if I was sewing this without a camera. And you notice I always hang on to my fabric until it's done sewing. And back to the work table. And now we want to fold this in half, wrong sides together, and you're going to go ahead and give it a press on your iron. And what we're going to do is, before we start, finish our back up, we want to take the top of our backing fabric, and I'm going to do this on the wrong side just so you can see it, and then I'll put it to the right side where it belongs. So the raw side is facing the raw side of the top, and it's going to just get centered between each side. And you want to make sure that you're not going to get caught in your seam allowance. In this case, our seam allowance is going to be 1/4 of an inch, and we've got a 1/2 inch on each side. Or I do on this side. I shouldn't say we, I guess I do. Okay? And we're going to go ahead and stitch this on about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, just so that it's on and we don't have to worry about it. But we want to make sure it's on the right side. We want to make sure if you have directional fabric, this is the top. And I'm going to go ahead and put a couple pins in. Oh, I need to come over just a little bit more, and I'll move my hand in 1 second so you can see better. Oh, see, I'm using my needles instead of my pins. I wonder why it felt so short. Okay, so see how I have fabric on each side that's just the back without the sleeve, and I want, because I need to get the rod of my hanger through here. Okay, so let's go ahead and sew that. And I'm about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And again, I don't have to lock the edge because there's going to be a seam coming by 1/4 of an inch in, so that'll hold the sleeve in even more. Now, if you don't want to hand stitch, this part down, which would, because otherwise when you put your hanger in, it would turn up like that. You would hand stitch along here. I'm just going to stitch, and you'll be able to see the color thread so that it is stitched onto the back. And I am going to lock this stitch. Oh, I need to be over just a tad. So I'm going to go ahead and just stitch in place a couple times, or go back a couple, forward couple, back a couple. Stitching close to the edge. When I get to the other end, I need to lock that too. So forward 3, back 3, or if you have the button for it to stitch in place, just stitch in place. I don't have that button on this particular machine. And let me take it over to the work table. So there's my little sleeve. And see, I just stitched it in place. And this is the back. It's not the end of the world to... Oh, I got a little flipped over piece of fabric there. So let me just fix that. Might as well fix as we go. So what happened is when I started stitching, see how this little piece flipped over? So I don't need to undo the whole thing. I don't need to re-sew it. I'm just going to undo that couple of stitches. because remember, this stitching is just holding the sleeve in place. Here we go. So now it's nice and flattened out. My sleeve is held in place, and so this, well, that wasn't good. I dropped that. Hold on. So now where my sleeve is, this is where my rod will go through for my hanger. And if you have a dowel or something and you need to make this bigger, go ahead and make it bigger. A dowel, probably a dowel this size around. You might want to add another inch, because when you fold it'll only be a 1/2 inch, because the fold is 1/2 inch and then the other part of the fold is the other 1/2 inch. It's an odd way to explain it, but I think you know what I mean. Okay, so now remember, this is going to go up the top. This piece needs to go on first, and I want to make sure that my edges here are lined up. And you're going to go ahead and iron yours. I ironed mine a little crooked so it keeps wanting to go back. And I don't really need to stitch this down. You could if you wanted to. You could do like 1/8 of an inch and stitch it down, but you should be fine. And then what we want to make sure we do is the top edge. Make sure that your eggs are at the top. And your basket for your eggs is, see, it's down the bottom. So I'm going to just go ahead and put a couple pins in here. That's the flap, and remember that little short flap is going to be put down first, so that nice folded edge will be to the outside when we turn it right side out. And you can use clips here if you want to. I think I've used some pins on another project because I'm running a little low. And I've just got a little more of my little, I'll call this the flap, than I need, so I just have to trim that off because it's hanging out over the edge. It's always easy to trim some off, but a little harder to put some back on, so just be careful. So I'm going to come back up to the top, and I want to make sure that I'm lined up along this top and along the sides. And I'm not going to pin through this area because I got the sleeve there, so there's a lot to pin through, but if you were doing your clips, you could clip it okay. And we just want to make sure that we lift each side to make sure that everything's even. We don't need that many pins, just a few. I'm going to pin where these two meet. So I think that's plenty of pins. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way here. So now we can stitch all the way around without stopping. We don't need a hole to turn because our hole to turn is going to be right here. So I wouldn't start down here in this thicker part, and I don't start in the corner. So I'm going to just start over here on the right hand side. I want a 1/4 inch seam. I don't need to lock it when I start because when I come down and around and back up and around, I'm going to come over my stitching by about 1 inch, and then I'll lock the stitch. So we don't need to lock it twice. So let's go to the sewing machine because we're almost done. Let me get some of my sewing paraphernalia out of the way here. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch all the way around with a 1/4 inch. I don't have to concern myself. Whoops, sorry. I'm trying to move the legs of the camera so that I'm not stepping on them. Let me tip this just a little bit down for you. Here we go. I think that's pretty good. So I don't have to be a perfect 1/4 inch, just, you know, a close 1/4 inch. And I'm going to keep my hand right here, and my other hand is down in this section holding the part that is leading up to the foot. My eye is at the edge of the foot to keep track of keeping my seam straight. I'm going to speed it up just a tad. Oh, that's more than a tad. There we go. Okay, I'm coming close to the pin, so when I take the pin out, I'm going to put my hand here, slide the pin out so I'm not pulling the fabric away from where it needs to be. I'm going to come down to the corner and stop where I think I need to turn, and you're always better off to stop early. Check and see. No, I haven't gone far enough, but you're always better off to stop early and then just go a stitch or two at a time. And then go ahead and turn. Taking my pin out. Taking my pin out. I don't have a lot of fabric to hang on to here. Again, I'm going to check. Oh, are we getting blurry there? I'm sorry. It's probably my hands. It's trying to focus in on my hands. Let me see if I can keep my hands more out of the way. I just need like one more stitch. Oh, it went 2. Oh, but that's good. That's fine. Now I want to be careful because this fabric will want to flip back over. So I'm just going to keep my fingers right here. You notice my fingers are over, away from the needle and away from the foot. As long as my fingers are away from the foot, they're not going to get into any trouble. Okay, I'm going to stop, take that pin out. I'm over that fabric now, this one, so it can't flip up on me. Okay, coming to a needle. If you need to stop and adjust your hands, there's no rule says that you have to go all the way without stopping. If you need to lift your foot up just to let the fabric relax, that's good too. Okay, I'm coming up near my edge again, or the next corner. I can see exactly where my sleeve is stitched, so I know I'm not near that. On the sides, the little side ones, the top are going to be near it. Let me check this. One more. Oh. One more stitch. There we go. I can see my stitching from when I put the sleeve on, so my new stitching is inside of that, so none of that will show on the outside. Again, if I need to stop and adjust anything, I can do that. So if I feel like something's off a little bit, now's the time to adjust that. One more stitch. And normally, I got my pins right over here. Normally I would put them right back in my pin cushion, but I don't want to slow you down from watching. I'm coming up to where I stitched before, so I want to make sure I stitch right over that same spot by about an inch or two. And then I want to make sure I do a locking stitch. So 3 forward, 3 back, or 3 stitches in place, either one. Okay, let's go back to the work table. So now we've stitched the whole way around. I'm just plugging in my iron. I didn't mean to have a pause there of no talking. So I've stitched all the way around. I'm going to clip my ends. Let me reach my scissors. I'm going to clip my corners. Oh, there you go. So you can see I've just taken the point off the corner. So see how the corner is pointed? I'm just going to take that corner off. There you go. That's a good shot right there. You can see where the stitching is. I'm a little ways away. I don't have to have I don't have to get as close as possible. I'm just taking off that extra bulk in the corner. So before I turn it right side out, we're going to give it a press, but I just want to remind you again about this sleeve. If you have a dowel or you have sometimes it's a long flat metal piece, you need to adjust the width of that little sleeve to accommodate what you're going to put through for your hanger. So, and remember a dowel, excuse me, because it's round, and I would say it's generally about that size, my pinky maybe. So you just want to make sure it can get through there okay. So you might have to do another inch, and I would just hold it down, pretend like it's sewn, and put the dowel through. If it's a little too snug, make it a little bigger. You don't want it too snug that it just really, once you sew, it isn't going to fit. Because you have to remember, you're going to take a 1/4 inch seam here. So a little bigger is okay. Okay, so let me get my little pressing mat, and you're going to be at your big pressing mat or your ironing station or your ironing board. And anytime we stitch, we iron or press. We're just going down the seams just to set the thread into the fabric. Then we're can reach in, and let's see if it's easier to reach in. Let's try it just from this way, like it's a sock, and we'll just push it through. So I'm going to hold on to this part here, and I'm going to just keep pulling it through. I'm starting to see the Easter eggs. Then I should be able to put my hand inside like it's a puppet. Now it's a sock puppet. Went from a sock to a sock puppet. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and get my corner turning tool and reach down in there. And make sure I get those corners out nicely. Sometimes if your corners just don't look right, you really haven't brought all your fabric out yet. I find that sometimes I'll be working in a corner, I'll go, geez, it just feels like there's a lot in there, and come to find out I haven't quite turned it as far as I thought I did. And I'm just going to lay this down, because I'm going to take my point turn and I'm going to just go right across that seam. And I think you'll be able to see my point turn and go across. So watch right here. It's going to go, see how it's poking across? Just to get that whole seam out. And there's my little sleeve. Can you see it? There's my sleeve, and there's plenty of room to get in on each side. And then I will come down with my point turner, and I'm coming down right along the seam. I'm just running my point turner along the seam, just to make sure I have everything pushed out well. Okay? And I'm going to give this a press, and you're going to look and go, well, that doesn't look that great. Well, this is going to flip over to the back, but let's get this pressed first. And I'm going to come to the right side, because my goal is, let me turn it your way. I don't want the back showing on the front. If you're concerned about that, or if it bothers you that it's on the, like if you looked at it from the side, it's there, then use the same fabric that's on your borders, and then you won't have that issue. So our top is looking pretty good. And again, you'll use your bigger iron. Give it a little steam. I'm a steamer. And we're just going to work our way down. And if we feel like this edge is like making a tunnel, just put your tool back in, and just, I'm pushing the seam to the left. So everybody's going to lay nice and flat. Okay, and now I can take this end, and I'm just going to turn it so it goes to the back. So when you turn yours right side out, don't panic and think it's on backwards. You've got you have to turn twice. Oh, and see, I didn't run my tool. See, what you'll watch, you'll see my tool going. Can you see it going across? And make sure you give it a good press of steam. And there we have it. There's our project all done. Let's see if I can get the whole thing in the camera. Let me back it up a little bit. There we go. There we go. So our hanger's up the top, and you can't see it much because, oh, I got a thread there, because it's the same fabric. And even though I just used a beige thread, it really doesn't show, and it's the back anyway. So that's my little hanger. And then down this end is where we turned it. And see, because I picked the busy fabric, you can't even see it. If this bothers you, then you can always do a couple hand stitches, or you can take a piece of steamer seam and put it on there and close it, and then just press it down. But it isn't going to do anything. Normally I would have this at the top, but because we have our sleeve, we didn't want to have our sleeve and our folded over and all that together. So there you go. You're all done. Now if you'd like to, and I'll go ahead and do it now, I'll stitch around in the ditch down. You know what? I don't think I would. Because you're going to have to stop and then go again. I think I would leave this just as it is, but if you want to, you could stitch in the ditch. You could do what you want. It's not that wide. What is it, 6 inches wide? So the batting is already held in place. Remember, we stitched the eggs with the batting on it, so the batting's not going to bunch up anywhere and move. And it's not that wide across here that you have to worry about this fabric doing anything. So I think we're good to go. So there we are, all our eggs in one basket. So I hope you enjoyed doing this. And remember, the series is in 4 parts. So if you just need to refresh on the stitching, that's part 3. The finishing, part 4. Part 1 was the getting started and the tracing. Part 2 was cutting out and making this whole background with the borders on it in the basket, with the basket fabric at the bottom. on it. So you have those 4 different parts, so you can refer to whichever part you want without going through a long video. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be doing some more. I'll do another one in a week or so of how to make a applique project using your brother's scan and cut to cut your pieces. So I'll do a few more projects, some more intricate applique where there's more pieces to contend with and all that. But this is a great basic one, and it might not be Easter, but what the heck, you can do this, put it away, have it out, whatever you want, but at least you'll know the basics and pick a simple project to get started with. So see you soon. Thanks for coming and stopping in. Bye.